Hey guys, Mr. Buckwheat here. In today's video will be part 2 of fully automating your Plex server. And today's video we'll talk about installing Watchtower, which is an automatic container updater and image puller, as well as showcasing how to mount additional storage devices as volumes right inside Portainer. So this will be if you have, let's say, a NUC and you're running or storing all your media on a secondary device in your network, or even an external outside of your network. I'll show you how to connect and mount that. And then we'll go over a little bit more in detail with in Watchtower. I'll show you guys how to set that up through PuTTY on a Windows 10 device. And then as always, I just want to let everybody know that I do offer my help and services. So feel free to reach out at Mr. Buckwheat on Discord, as well as you can email me at info@mrbuckwheat.com. Leave comments below about your setup and leave a like if this video helped you at all. And turn on those notifications, as well as this is a multi-part series. And me going over almost like 45 something containers and showing you how to set all those up on your network and your devices. So before we begin, let's start up that virtual machine. Be the same as the one that we were using in the last video. So let's boot that up and get started. Okay, so here we are on the desktop of my QNAP device. So before we get started, let's first start up the virtualization stainer and our testing environment. So this is the same virtual machine that we had on the last video. So we'll start this. Now, a little bit of confusion. I showcased in the last video 2 ways of installing or accessing the command line. One was through the terminal session inside of this Ubuntu instance running on this VM. And then I also talked about using PuTTY through Windows. Both will work, and I just want to clarify that. So the reason why I was using PuTTY is because me having the QNAP, that's how I would create the SSH connection so that we can access or we can configure the sock connection for Portainer. Now, if you're running Ubuntu, then you would just use that terminal session, which is what I did in the previous video to issue the command lines. But what I'm getting at is the command lines are the same. So here on this instance, I'm going to show the next step, which is Watchtower, which will also require a sock connection, but instead I'm going to use PuTTY through Windows as if you were, the same way that if I was using like it on my QNAP. The point is, what I'm trying to get at, the whole point of this is it's the same command lines, the same commands, the same stuff that I'm typing in here will work on both instances. So whether you have Synology, a Synology device, a QNAP device, Ubuntu, if you run anything that's Linux based, as long as you can access that SSH connection or you're using that terminal connection or a program that has terminal built into it, it'll work the same. So now that this is open up, and again, just reiterating, this is the exact same instance. There's a clean install. If we go into the main folder here, you'll see that here's the container folder with Portainer. That's the only thing running right now. Let's open up Portainer as well on this. .34. Oh, hold on. 192. And we want 9443. So here's like the main Portainer instance. We'll log in the username and password. And you can see if we live connect to this, there's only one container here, just Portainer. So again, same install that we had in the previous video. Okay, so first things first, if I'm running Ubuntu, it's as simple as opening up the terminal session and we're good to go on that. Now, if we wanted to, let's say, run if we had another device where we're running something on PuTTY, and let's bring that over here. We'll set this up later. There would be a couple of things that we have to enable. And again, the only reason why I'm enabling this is for testing environments, but it's the same thing if you didn't want to use this terminal session and you wanted to use the PuTTY connection on Windows, you'd be doing the same thing. So I'm going to enable a couple settings in here first. And again, you don't have to do this. I'm only doing this for testing environments, but this is how you would enable an SSH connection in Ubuntu. So a couple of commands that we got to run first is we actually have to install the SSH server. And to do that, I would type sudo apt install openssh-server, because we want the server up and running on this instance so that we can make connections to it from another device. So that's going to open up and run. Once that finishes, the next command that we want to issue is to enable it. So we'll do sudo systemctl enable SSH. So that's good. And then finally, we want to enable the firewall for port 22 so that we can make an inbound connection to this instance. So sudo ufw allow SSH. Perfect. Rules are updated. We'll test this out. We'll run systemctl start SSH. That looks good. And we can check the status of it by running that same command. And instead of start, we'll just do status. Perfect. So that's up and running. We're good to go on that. That means now if I wanted to create an SSH connection to this instance, again, it may sound crazy what I'm doing, but I'm only doing this for testing purposes to demonstrate that, you know, the commands that I'm running in terminal or PuTTY are the same. And all I'm doing right here is enabling SSH. The next steps, I'll show you how to shut this off. But if I open up PuTTY and I grab my IP address on this instance, and I can get that from going into the settings here. Oh, once this connects, give it a second here to catch up. Let's put this on high. And we go into settings, find my IP, and here's the IP address. So I'll copy that into PuTTY. So 192.168.1.34, port 22. We'll hit open and connect. You're going to get a pop-up that says, you know, allow this connection, hit OK or allow. And we're going to log in with my username. In this case, it's Mr. Buckwheat. Enter my password. Hit enter. Now, I'm in PuTTY right now, but now I'm connected to this virtual machine the same way if I had terminal open up. The point is, you know, running these PuTTY commands, running these terminal commands again, it's going to be the same on whatever device you have. As long as we get that SSH connection, when we need to enable a container, you know, for Portainer, if you're having trouble getting that installed, or the sock connection's not working, this is how you do it. So there's multiple ways of doing it. You have the terminal, you have this way. So this way here, and again, if we just pull up ls on here, again, we see all the same folders that are inside this instance. Even though I'm accessing this, this virtual machine running Ubuntu on my NAS from my PC. I know that's ridiculous, but the whole point, and the reason why I'm showing this again, is because as long as you're following these steps, as long as you're making sure that the connections and you're using the right code, you're going to be able to do this any which way, you know, sideways, left, right. You can do it however you want. So whatever's easier for you. If you like running terminal through Ubuntu, if you're doing the SSH, you know, because you have QNAP, Synology, these will all work. All of these ways that I'm showing you, it's all on the same network. Even as complicated as this is, I mean, this setup is, no one's going to have this setup right now, but the point is just, again, to show you testing purposes, multiple ways of accessing, you know, the terminal or an SSH connections, that you can make sure that you have these containers installed properly, because that is the hardest part, is you have to make sure you have these sock connections. Otherwise, Portainer won't work, Watchtower won't work, and you won't be able to get the full functionality. And so we need this. So what I'm going to do here, and again, we'll just showing you that we have everything set up already. So if I did cd / and then we do ls. So here's that same folder, the container folder that we had already set up. So what I'm going to do now is install Watchtower using PuTTY so that it sends these commands, you know, as if right into this Docker instance, so that way I can keep all the images up to date. So let's install Watchtower. And again, this will be the last time I use any of the SSH stuff, because this is the only other container that requires that sock connection. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is because I want to make sure that it makes that sock connection and that I don't have any issues. So let's go over to the Watchtower website, you know, the main website, and I'm just clicking on the usage overview, and I'm pulling the basic command lines to get Watchtower up and running. And in this case, it's this first one here. So I'm going to just copy that into PuTTY. But first, I want to add the sudo command in front of it. Since again, we're using that sock connection, and the sudo grants me, you know, the administrative privileges in order to make this connection happen. And I just hit enter my password. Perfect. So it's pulling the container. It's already done. If I go into the Portainer instance now, there it is. There's that Watchtower instance ready to go up and running. And again, you can do this either way. If you're using Ubuntu, use terminal. If you have any other device, you're going to use the PuTTY connection. Now, if you're on Mac, Mac has their own software, but it's basically the same setup. You'd be using the same IPs, the commands and everything are the same. Now, I'm just going to modify this a little bit because I want to add a couple of settings into Watchtower. One of which, if we take a look at the arguments here, you have the ability to clean up old images. So that way, you know, anytime there's an update, it's not saving all of these extra images or outdated images that I'm not using. It'll keep, you know, the file sizes down of everything, as well as it'll start and stop the containers automatically. And then the other thing that I want to add is a schedule to it. And the way that Watchtower works in terms of adding, a schedule is it'll be through a cron expression. And you can generate however you want or whatever settings you want. Here's a nice little link here that I use to create something. So I just made an expression here that's going to run the update every 6 hours at specific times. So you can change this around by modifying it, you know, mess around with stuff that you want, however you want it, things like that. So, you know, this tool is great. It saves a ton of headaches. So we're just going to do, like I said, we'll go back to the /6. So what was it? /6, comma, or comma 6, comma 18. So perfect. So that's 12 a.m., 6 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m. So I'll copy that. And let's go back into Portainer. And we're going to modify this Watchtower instance to add those variables that I want. So we're just going to click on duplicate/edit. And now I can go down to my environments and I can configure a couple of things. So one of which I want to set is my TZ. The other one that we're going to want to set here are those two variables. And I'll give you these right here. So the first one is Watchtower cleanup. So we'll just copy paste that in. And the next one is the Watchtower schedule. And we'll copy paste that in there. So time zone for me is America /New York, because I'm on the East Coast. Watchtower cleanup. We want to set this to true, because that'll take care of the old images. And then again, we're just going to copy this cron expression and we'll paste this in here. So now that way, this will run the update, like I said, 12 o'clock, every 6 hours at specific hours. And then all I got to do for this is just hit deploy, replace, and now Watchtower is up and running on my set schedule, good to go. Perfect. So the last thing that I want to show you here too is some people will have different types of installs. You know, they may not necessarily have a NAS that's going to house all the media. They may have a separate device. You know, you may be running a NUC with another NAS attached to it. as long as everything's on the same network and you're able to access those IP addresses, it's very easy to configure, and I'll even show you how to do that right here in Portainer. So that way when you're mounting volumes or folder paths in Portainer, you'll basically have like a one-all access, ready to go, already set up on this volumes page. So that way it's just as simple as literally a drop-down menu. So how you'll do that is we'll go into volumes, and I'm going to click add volume. Now what I want to do for this is I'm going to actually mount my /media folder in my QNAP instance, or on my actual, like my main QNAP. So again, if we were going into File Station, I click on media, I have all my stuff here, movies, TV shows, anime, everything. So how do I mount this? So let's just say I'm in the Portainer instance inside the virtual machine running Docker. I know it's crazy. No one's ever going to be doing it, but again, we're just pretending that these are two separate devices, because they really are, for testing purposes. Okay, so we're going to label this. I'm going to keep this media 1, but you can label this whatever you want. And the only reason is because I want to be able to distinct the difference between media 1, or better yet, I'll do like media NAS QNAP. So that way you guys kind of can tell the difference versus like an actual folder inside Ubuntu. And we'll keep all this the same, but what we're going to enable is this CIFS. Now the address, we're going to type in my main IP address for my NAS. In this case, my NAS is on .36, and then we're going to type the folder I want mounted. So for QNAP, I'm able to access the /media just by itself. That's how QNAP system's set up. Your device may be different. You may need a /volume1 /media, or it may be a /home, whatever it is. Just double check. And how you can do that is, if you're accessing the device, let's say from your from Windows, and I'll just kind of pull that up here real quick. So if let's just say I'm on my network here, and I were to go to my NAS. My NAS has all the folders here. So for my media, this is where everything, because that main folder is exposed. So really what I'm doing is I'm just replacing my subdomain, which in this case is, Mr. Buckwheat. It would be with the IP address /the folder. So that's why I'm just mounting /media here, because that's, that gives me access directly. That's the path directly to this folder. Username, we're going to use my username and password for the NAS. In this case, it's that. And we'll hit create the volume. Oh, we got to make sure, of course, this has always got to be no spaces and no dashes. So we'll just change this back to media 1 and hit create. Perfect. So that's connected. This media 1 now is mounted in Portainer on this virtual machine. So even though these are, remember, we're considering these two separate devices, this volume is now mounted, and any containers that I create, I could then point that mount inside these containers. So this is pretty much good to go. These are all set. We're ready to start creating some containers. I'll show you guys how to do that in the next video. Before we go, I just want to make sure you guys know how to turn off the SSH stuff. So what I'm going to do here, we'll close out this, or I'll do this. I got to do this in the terminal session, because remember, if we close out those connections, this PuTTY session will no longer work. And again, I recommend you shut SSH off when you're done with whatever you got to do. It's not a good idea to leave it open. It's a vulnerability risk. So, let's close this out. Let's end this session. Let's head back into Ubuntu. Let's reconnect, and let's go into terminal. And there'll be a couple of commands that you're going to want to run. So the first one is we need to stop the SSH and then remove it. So the first thing that you'll do is sudo systemctl systemctl stop SSH, enter our password. Perfect. Then we'll do sudo systemctl disable SSH. Perfect. So that's shutting down. And then now we want to remove the openssh-server because we're probably not going to need it anymore. Again, we got the 2 containers that require the sock connection going forward. You know, anything that you set up is probably not going to need it now that we're already set up. So let's get apt-get remove openssh dash server. Hit enter. That's going to uninstall it. Press yes. And we're done. So now we got, oh, and the last thing we want to do, we want to turn back that firewall on for port 22. So UFW delete allow SSH. So that way that protects us again. So now we're re-enabling the firewall. We're deleting this exception in order to make the connection. And now those rules have been updated. So now port 22 is secure again. All right, so that's it. We got Watchtower up and running on a set schedule. So that'll always, you know, given on those dates and times, it'll always pull the latest images, stop those containers, and update them so that they're good to go. I don't even have to touch them, as well as I showcased how to mount those volumes as well in Portainer. And again, you know, depending on your setup, you may have multiple NASs, you may have an external NAS. This will work. You just, you know, you're going to change the IP addresses to wherever those devices are located, and you're off to the races. So again, leave a like if this video helped you at all. Leave your comments below talking about your setup, or if you do have any questions, again, you can reach out to me directly, you know, at Mr. Buckwheat Everything. And then I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.